All right, I want to talk about something a little bit different today. Most of the time, I spend my time talking about books and ska music on this channel. Today, I want to talk about a couple of movies, and they're documentaries, definitely something you'd see in a library, and they are fantastic. Primarily, I'm going to talk about the newer one. So the documentary I'm going to start talking to you about today is a documentary called The Last Blockbuster. So the last Blockbuster was created and sort of done by the same guy who did Pick It Up, Ska in the 90s. I've talked about Pick It Up, Ska in the 90s before, although I may do another episode where I go, or video where I go more in depth into this documentary. But it was a phenomenal documentary that highlighted the pop punk music that was a craze in the 90s and sort of faded out very quickly, but is actually still going strong and even coming back. Now, The Last Blockbuster tells the story of the last Blockbuster store to remain open, which is in Bend, Oregon. This documentary is such a powerful documentary, and I'll say that for one, I worked in a Blockbuster. Close to my home, I grew up in Bedford, Texas. There was a Blockbuster on Central Drive, if you're from around here, and I worked in that Blockbuster for a little bit when I was in high school, and I loved that job. So not only does it give sort of like an ode and a love song for those who've worked in a video store, but it really just highlights the beauty and the power of the video store. So I'm gonna put that down. One of the things that is so fantastic about video stores, and I'll say this, just in general, we are missing out as we're getting rid of physical media. Now, there's some huge benefits to getting rid of physical media. Number one, you can have more media all the time because you have access to it through digital means. Number two, it's more environmentally friendly because you're not producing millions of copies of these things that require plastic and paper and all that kind of stuff. But there is something magical and beautiful and wonderful about having a physical copy of something in your hands, which is probably why I've fallen in love with collecting vinyl. There's something about that, the work put into that. So remember on those movie cases, not the Blockbuster ones because obviously they were printed by Blockbuster, but the original covers of those movies, the work that was put into the cover art, the work that was put into the back art and the description of the movie, and all of that is something that we're missing. It talks about a lot in the documentary about that idea of going into a video store and walking the aisles and looking for the perfect movie, and how as a family, maybe mom got a movie and both kids got a movie, maybe dad got a movie, everybody kind of got their own movie, and maybe they'd watch some of that together and some of it not. And I remember going over and over and over to Blockbuster and picking up movies like The Monster Squad and Gleaming the Cube and Masters of the Universe and The Never-Ending Story and those kinds of movies that were transformative to me. The Goonies, these movies that made up a lot of my childhood. They were powerful stories that have influenced who I am as a human being. And even when I worked there later, these are the movies I would check out over and over and over again to watch. So it talks about that. It talks about the idea of renting a movie and going home as a date night and not being as sort of being more romantic than the ideas connected to watching a movie with the loved one watch on Netflix. There was a part 2 where Ione Skye, I think, in the documentary talked about how there's almost like a vulnerability in picking out a movie in a video store with other people around, like that other people might see what you're picking out and might have an opinion about it. And I remember, that vulnerability of picking out a movie that, someone might form some sort of an opinion about me based off of that movie. It was a love song. The documentary, The Last Blockbuster, was a love song to the video store. It was a love song to the physical medium of movies, and it was a beautiful and powerful story. And I hope that the Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon is able to stay open for a long, long time. But most of all, I hope, let's say that's most of all. But also, I hope that you guys will go pick up a copy of The Last Blockbuster. Either buy a copy, or it's ironically, on Netflix. You can watch it on Netflix. And support that great documentary. And once you're done with that, go get a copy of Ska in the 90s. Pick it up, Ska in the 90s, if you haven't picked that up yet, because my goodness, is that a great documentary. One of my all-time favorites. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Talk to you about those two documentaries, and I hope that you'll go find one and pick it up.